Just give me a set of pliers, Bobby. The middle pliers. Oh, there goes the engine.
It's Monday, January 6, 2025. And a long overdue update on Project Ghia, our 1963 Karmann Ghia coupe we bought after seeing it in the car corral at the New Hope Auto Show in August. A variety of things going on, just we haven't gotten around to starting to work on this. And candidly, in September, we replaced the axle boots. So when we bought the car in August, it was clear when we brought it in here that it had a leak. And we thought the cracked axle boots were the culprit. These cars, these pre-67, I believe, are all swing axle cars. And they rely on a bolt-on boot. And so we said, okay, let's try to do those. However, after doing that, we still have oil leaks in the engine. Now, some will argue these engines always leak, but the size of that puddle over the last several weeks is clearly indicative of something going on. Today's goal is to pull the engine, and once we get the engine pulled, we'll see if we have any leaks, and we'll take it from there. All right, so let's fire her up and get the engine out, see what we got going on. The world record for a Beetle engine removal and reinstallation is 1 minute and 6 seconds. I'm proud to say the video you're about to watch took us about 90 minutes from start to finish after I brought the car into the garage. We put the Beetle into onto the two-post lift at about 10:30, and just before lunchtime, we had the engine removed. I've identified 10 key things you have to disconnect or remove before you take out the typical Type 1 air-cooled Volkswagen engine. Now, the first is the battery. In a Beetle, the battery's underneath the back seat, so it's just a matter of disconnecting the engine ground and the positive terminal in the engine bay. However, in a Karmann Ghia, in our car, the battery's located on the passenger side, the right side, and so we had to remove the battery and disconnect the positive cable and the negative cable. Second thing is, depending on your application, you need to take out the 2 heater hoses that come off. It's known as the doghouse. That's the main cooling tin. It's good to remove the ground strap that attaches from the battery to the base of the alternator or generator stand. Depending on your application, you need to remove the air cleaner. In our case, we have the stock air cleaner. I believe it might be an oil bath with a couple of breather hoses. And so it just made sense to remove that for better clearance. You need to remove the coil wires that come into the coil to and from the battery, as well as the main harness. In our case, we took it off because it's actually a plate that's connected to the stock air cleaner. There is a temp wire that goes that connects to the just below the distributor, and we believe that goes to the temperature gauge, the temperature light, if you will, in the dashboard. There's a wire, typically a green wire, that goes from the coil to the distributor to power it. And then you need to remove and plug the fuel line. Now you're going to see we made that mistake in a little bit. I'll get into that. Depending on your application, you need to remove the throttle linkage, which typically comes through the doghouse, and in a single card setup is right there on the manifold. In a dual card setup, it's typically controlling an eccentric. But then, depending on whether you have a manual choke or an electric choke, you may need to remove that cable. In our case, we have an electric choke on the carburetor, so it's just a matter of removing that wire. And finally, to gain the right access when you're lowering the engine and pulling it out from the bottom, you do need to remove the rear tin, known as the cooling tin. And that basically is where the aforementioned heater ducts plug into as they connect to the heat exchangers just below that tin. The most important thing here to remember is as you're removing everything, if you're not familiar with these engines, and even if you are, it's always a good practice. You'll see me with my blue painter's tape and a Sharpie marking each connection as we go. It's probably going to be a week or so before we get this thing back together, but I barely remember how I get anywhere day to day, so why take that chance? Let me take you through the whole process as we go through it. So in this shot, you see my colleague Joe taking out the battery, and underneath the generator, he's removing the ground strap. He's just removing everything at once. Once he has everything disconnected, it's a matter of just pulling the battery away. And now he is disconnecting the positive and negative terminals that connect the generator to the car's wiring harness. And I'm actively labeling each as he removes them. And then Joe went ahead and started taking the air cleaner off of the single carburetor we have on this application. This is a later model 1500cc single port engine, so it did have the older style air cleaner. Here I am taking the defroster tubes off, and there's the coil wire. You saw that green spiraled coil wire that Joe is disconnecting because in our case the coil plate came off with the air cleaner. And depending on the age of yours and what emissions equipment you have, those breather hoses may vary, but there I am sneaking in and getting the other defroster hose off. So right here, in this section, you see that orange forcep. That's actually on the soft inlet of the fuel pump. And what I failed to remember was in this particular car, that soft line goes back around the doghouse on the driver's side, the left side, to a hard line. And in fact, you can see it. Yeah. So just to the left of the distributor, is the hard line fuel line coming in. So while I was taking off the soft thing and the forceps, put the forceps on to keep the gas from flowing, that became a hassle when we were actually taking the engine out. You'll see a little bit later. Here I'm taking off the throttle cable, and as I mentioned, we have an electric choke on this carburetor, so we didn't need to do anything with that. And this shot finally is Joe taking out the rear tin. Moving on, once we had everything in the engine bay done, Joe went underneath with a 17 millimeter, and there's 2 bolts underneath that connect the engine to the lower part of the transmission. And here are the 2 top engine bolts. Now I'm going to stop here because now what's interesting, you see this red circle. That's supposed to be where the other bolt goes. However, we were floored when we found that the engine did not have a bolt in this. Now you see what looks like a boss coming off of the flange of the back of the engine that mates with the transmission. That's actually a removable boss we found. So for whatever reason, whoever put this engine in did not put a bolt in, or if they did, it loosened up and is gone. So this engine was being held in with 3 bolts. Four is a little light to begin with, but then to remove 25% of the attachment points of the engine's a little disturbing. But we're going to take care of that when we put everything back in. So now you see Joe bringing in a floor jack. What I didn't catch was him putting a couple blocks. And here I am. Joe is on he's running the lift while I try to reef out the engine as he slowly lifts and it came out. But then we realized it was hung up on something when they were doing it. And then we realized it was the hard lines on of the hard fuel line. So Joe saw that quickly and reacted quickly. Unfortunately, the lesson learned here is you got to have that engine supported better. And that's when it fell off the jack. No harm, no foul. The engine's going to be fine. And here we are dragging it to the engine stand. And there we are. Bob's helping us. Our other colleague Bob is helping us put it on. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So with the engine out, I proceeded to start steam cleaning it. Some spots needed a little bit of brake clean to help me do it, but between using my steam cleaner, a tub of towels, cloths, I started cleaning up the engine to try and determine where the leak was coming from. A couple other things we checked. Luckily, I was worried going into this that the crankshaft end play would be such that we would have to get another engine or at least rebuild this one. I was also worried that it was the rear main seal, which would have required removing the clutch and getting back there and doing it. Not a hard job per se, but I just didn't want to have to do it. And at worst cases, we thought maybe we'd have to split the case. Remember, these Volkswagen engines are actually 2 halves held together. From the factory, there were more. So if that mating surface isn't right, or if it's become warped from overheating, that would cause the leaks. And we just couldn't tell with the engine in the car what was going on. So after pulling the engine, we learned a few things. The rear main seal is not leaking, so we won't have to remove the clutch. And there's no end play in the crankshaft. Great news. So it looks like upon Joe removing the crankshaft pulley, we got better visibility to the oil pump housing that's directly below it with the tin off. And it was clear that that's the likely culprit of what's causing this slow leak when the car is sitting, not being used. So we went ahead and resealed that immediately. So I ordered a reseal hardware kit from J-Bugs. And of course, they had the gaskets for that in that kit. So Joe went ahead and resealed that. And 2 days in, as I'm filming this, it appears dry. So I think we've eliminated the culprit. I'm still going to go ahead and reseal a couple of things. This is a good opportunity to clean up the engine, detail the hood. When we pulled the engine, something happened to the throw-out bearing. The clips came apart. So right now I have a new clutch throw-out bearing on order, as well as a firewall cover. It's a 5-piece kit, and a new seal for the engine that goes around the opening where the engine fits in. We're going to clean up and paint all the tins and just make the engine look really nice, give it a nice tune-up, valve lash adjustment, and the car will be hopefully sealed up and ready for the spring. If you noticed it in the background, that's another project car we will be doing some things on Grime Time here with, and that is a 1960 Lincoln Continental Mark V. Yes, a Mark V. So I'll be doing a video upcoming about that car. It's a very rare car, and we found a nice solid driver. But for now, that's what's going on, and you know about that. So if you enjoyed this video, at a minimum, please press the like button. If you haven't done so, I encourage you to press the subscribe button, as I have a variety of content on this channel. And while you're at it, I encourage you to check out Guys with Rides, my main website, where I'm trying to create a dealer-free community and marketplace for classic car enthusiasts. We're not just about auctions. I post a variety of content 6 days a week. So I hope you take the time, check it out. If you have any questions, reach out. Always available by phone or email. I appreciate you watching. Get out there and drive, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching this video. Please press the like and subscribe button, comment below, and be sure to check out our other videos on this subject, as well as all of the great content on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, you can call me at the number listed below, or be sure to check out our main website, guyswithrides.com.